The room was buzzing with chatter and laughter, filled with families and friends who had come to watch a music recital. Chairs were arranged neatly in rows, and the stage at the front held a shining grand piano under the soft glow of the lights. The air smelled faintly of polished wood and fresh flowers, and the excitement was almost tangible. Among the crowd sat a little girl, small and quiet, her fingers fidgeting in her lap as she watched the older students perform one by one. She loved music more than anything, but the thought of performing in front of so many people made her stomach twist in knots. She had been learning piano for years, practicing every day in the corner of her small bedroom, her mother often sitting nearby, encouraging her and clapping when she hit the right notes. Even though she loved those moments, she had always stayed out of the spotlight, performing only for her family and close friends. Big audiences, bright lights, and unfamiliar faces were a different world entirely, and the thought of stepping into that world made her feel tiny and invisible. The recital was running smoothly. Students played their pieces with confidence, and the audience applauded politely. The little girl watched from her seat, taking deep breaths, trying to calm her nerves. She focused on the patterns her fingers had memorized, imagining herself gliding across the keys, but every now and then, her mind would wander to the thought of making a mistake in front of everyone. The fear of failing kept her glued to her chair, and she wished she could disappear into the background. Then, the organizer of the event stepped onto the stage, smiling brightly at the crowd. He held a small box in his hand and addressed everyone. "We have a little surprise for today," he said, his voice carrying clearly across the hall. "Instead of selecting a performer beforehand, we will randomly choose a student from the audience to play a piece on the piano. This is to encourage everyone and show that talent can shine in unexpected places." The crowd murmured, some leaning forward with curiosity, others exchanging surprised glances. The little girl's heart skipped a beat. She could feel a knot tightening in her stomach, a mix of fear and curiosity swirling inside her. Could it be her? Was she ready for something like this? She felt small and uncertain, wondering if she had the courage to rise to the occasion. The organizer reached into the box and pulled out a slip of paper. He shook it lightly before announcing, "And the student chosen to play the piano today is..." He paused, savoring the moment, letting the anticipation hang in the air. "You!" His voice echoed, and a flutter of gasps ran through the audience. The little girl froze. Her eyes widened in disbelief as the realization sank in. It was her name. She had been randomly selected. She looked around, searching for someone to explain or take it back, but no one did. All eyes were on her. The applause began, gentle at first, but growing louder as the audience encouraged her. Her legs felt like jelly, and her hands trembled, but she knew there was no turning back. Slowly, she rose from her seat, clutching her small hands together as she walked toward the stage. Every step felt heavy, as if the floor itself had become sticky, holding her back. She could hear whispers of encouragement from some parents, soft murmurs of curiosity from others, and the distant clapping of friends. The closer she got to the piano, the louder her heartbeat became, thumping in her ears. She tried to steady her breathing, reminding herself of the countless hours she had spent practicing in her room, of the songs she had played so many times they were part of her. Finally, she reached the stage and looked out at the audience. They seemed like a sea of faces, all staring at her, waiting. The lights above her glimmered and reflected off the polished surface of the piano, making it look grander than anything she had ever touched. She paused, taking a deep breath, trying to gather her courage. Her hands hovered above the keys, trembling slightly, and she felt a tiny bead of sweat trickle down her forehead. The room was silent now, the kind of silence that made every tiny noise seem enormous. The little girl closed her eyes for a moment, remembering her lessons, the rhythm, and the melody. She reminded herself that the piano had always been her friend, that it had listened to her when no one else did. Slowly, she opened her eyes and placed her fingers on the keys. They felt cool and smooth, familiar yet intimidating in the same instant. The audience watched, holding their breath, sensing the nervous energy radiating from her. She pressed the first key, a soft note that seemed to float into the air. It was tentative, unsure, but it was a start. She inhaled deeply and continued, the notes slowly forming the melody she had practiced so many times. Each key she pressed gave her a little more confidence, and the fear that had clutched at her heart began to loosen. The audience remained silent, captivated by the fragile beauty of the music. The little girl could feel their attention like a warm light surrounding her, neither threatening nor harsh, but gentle and focused. Her fingers moved with increasing confidence, guided by muscle memory and a love for the music that had carried her through countless solo sessions at home. She imagined herself in her bedroom again, playing for her mother, feeling safe and secure. That familiar feeling allowed her to push the nerves aside, to let the music flow naturally. Each note resonated in the hall, weaving a tapestry of sound that seemed larger than the small girl at the piano. Somewhere in the middle of the piece, she stumbled slightly on a tricky passage. For a fraction of a second, panic rose in her chest, threatening to take over. But she quickly remembered what her teacher had always said. Mistakes are just part of the music. With a small, determined smile, she continued, turning the stumble into a gentle pause that added emotion to the performance. The audience felt it, sensing the humanity and vulnerability in her music, and they listened even more intently. As the last notes approached, her confidence grew, and the melody became richer, fuller, more expressive. The little girl felt a sense of exhilaration and joy that she had never known in public performance before. She could see some parents leaning forward, some children watching wide-eyed, all captivated by the music that seemed to come effortlessly from her small hands. The hall felt suspended in time, as if nothing else existed except her and the piano. And then, with a final, delicate note, she finished. The room was completely silent for a heartbeat, as if everyone were holding their breath, unwilling to break the spell. Then, slowly, applause began. It started as a gentle clapping, building in intensity until the entire hall erupted in cheers and claps. Some people stood, others whispered words of praise, and the little girl felt a warmth in her chest, a mix of relief, pride, and happiness. She looked up from the piano, smiling shyly, tears welling in her eyes. She had faced her fear, shared her music with strangers, and it had touched them. The once overwhelming audience now seemed like a crowd of friends, all celebrating her courage and talent. That small moment on the stage, which had started with fear and uncertainty, had turned into something beautiful, unforgettable, and life-changing. She realized then that sometimes, the most unexpected opportunities could reveal strength and talent she never knew she had. After the applause began to fade, the little girl stepped away from the piano, her legs feeling a little unsteady. She walked slowly toward the edge of the stage, her small hands still shaking slightly, but inside her, a spark of excitement had begun to grow. It was a strange feeling, fear mixed with pride, nervousness mixed with a sense of accomplishment. She had faced a moment that had terrified her and had come out stronger, and now the world seemed a little bigger, a little more open. The audience continued to murmur among themselves, talking about how unexpectedly talented the young girl had been. Some people leaned closer to their neighbors, whispering about the precision of her notes, the emotion in her performance, and the bravery it must have taken to play without preparation. A few parents glanced toward the seats where she had been sitting earlier, smiling at the thought of how a shy child had suddenly become the center of attention. The little girl overheard some of the whispers and felt a warm, glowing pride, but she tried not to let it overwhelm her. Backstage, she was met with the gentle smiles of the organizers and teachers. One teacher knelt down to meet her eyes and said softly, "You did wonderfully. Everyone could feel the music you played." She nodded silently, her cheeks warm, but the words helped calm the lingering nerves that still hummed through her body. The organizer approached and patted her shoulder, saying, "That was a very special performance. You should be proud of yourself." The encouragement was comforting, and she felt the tension of the moment begin to ease. As she sat down for a moment behind the stage, she noticed some of the older students watching her with a mixture of admiration and curiosity. They had all prepared carefully for their performances, And yet here was a child, chosen at random, who had captivated everyone with a single piece. She felt a little embarrassed by the attention but also thrilled. The applause had made her heart race, but now, reflecting on it quietly, she realized she had experienced something beautiful, something that went beyond just playing the right notes. The little girl's mind wandered back to the journey that had brought her here. Every day of practice in her small bedroom had prepared her in ways she hadn't realized. The hours of repeating scales, learning to move her fingers precisely, and listening carefully to melodies. All of it had built a foundation that allowed her to shine when the unexpected opportunity arrived. She understood now that even the moments when she had felt bored or frustrated practicing were important. Those quiet, private hours of dedication had made this moment possible. The hall had quieted down as the next scheduled performers prepared to take the stage. She watched as the older students walked confidently to their instruments, some nodding to the audience, some looking serious and focused. She thought about how different it felt to be in that position, to have the spotlight suddenly on her without warning. It was a lesson in courage and adaptability, something she realized would stay with her forever. Even though she had been scared at first, the experience had taught her that sometimes, the unexpected can be the most rewarding. She walked back toward her seat, feeling the soft carpet under her shoes, the faint hum of the air conditioning, and the quiet rustle of programs being turned in the audience. Sitting down, she felt a strange sense of connection to everyone in the room. It wasn't just the applause. It was the feeling of shared experience, of touching people through music in a way that words alone could not achieve. She realized that her shyness didn't have to hold her back. It could coexist with her courage and her talent. Her mind drifted to the small details she had noticed during her performance. The polished surface of the piano reflecting the lights, the way the audience seemed to lean in with every note, and the silent moments that felt like magic when the music seemed to fill the air completely. Every memory felt vivid, almost as if the performance had been larger than life. She thought about how important it was to be present in those moments, to focus entirely on the music and not let fear take over. That focus had helped her move from hesitation to confidence. Nearby, a parent leaned over to whisper to another adult, pointing toward the stage. The little girl caught a few words, phrases like, "so talented," "unbelievable for her age," and "incredible courage." Her heart swelled with pride, not because she wanted praise, but because she had experienced the pure joy of sharing something meaningful with others. She realized that talent is not just about skill. It's also about the willingness to take a risk and put your heart into something. As the next students took the stage, she found herself paying attention differently. She noticed the way they adjusted their posture, the way they focused their eyes on the keys or the sheet music, and the way they expressed emotion through their music. Watching them, she felt inspired to continue learning and improving. She knew that this was only the beginning of her journey, not the end. The performance had given her a taste of what was possible, and she wanted to explore it further. The little girl thought about how her family would react after the recital. She imagined her mother's proud smile, her father's quiet nod of approval, and the warm congratulations from close friends. It was the thought of sharing this experience with people who loved her that made the entire event feel even more special. She realized that music was not only a personal joy but also a bridge to connect with others, to share emotions that words could not capture. She reflected on the lesson that had come from being chosen at random. Life could present opportunities when least expected, and sometimes those moments required courage and trust in oneself. She had stepped onto the stage feeling small and unsure, but by embracing the challenge, she had discovered a strength she did not know she had. That understanding was more valuable than any applause or praise. It was a sense of self-confidence that would guide her in the future. The recital continued, and the little girl continued to sit quietly, absorbing the performances around her, feeling both humbled and motivated. She watched as others shared their music, learning from their styles and expressions. Even in moments of pause between performances, she thought about how she could practice differently, how she could challenge herself, and how she could continue to grow as a musician. The performance had opened her eyes to possibilities she had not considered before. By the time the recital ended, she felt a quiet satisfaction. She had faced fear, performed in front of strangers, and found joy in the process. The hall emptied slowly, people exchanging compliments and goodbyes, and the little girl walked out with her family, carrying a new sense of pride and purpose. She understood that the journey ahead would require practice, patience, and courage, but she was ready to embrace it. As she left the building, the cold evening air brushing against her cheeks, she thought about how life could surprise her in the most unexpected ways. A random selection, a moment of uncertainty, and yet it had turned into an experience she would never forget. She felt grateful for the chance to share her music, to connect with others, and to discover something new about herself. The world felt a little wider, her dreams a little closer, and her heart a little braver. The next day, the little girl woke up with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. Her mind kept replaying the performance from the night before, the bright lights of the auditorium, the polished piano, and the faces in the audience. She could feel the flutter in her chest as she remembered the applause, the feeling of connection she had experienced, and the pride that had filled her. It was as if her heart had opened to a new possibility, and she couldn't stop thinking about what might come next. Her family gathered in the kitchen, talking about the recital and how remarkable her performance had been. Her mother placed a gentle hand on her shoulder and said, "You were amazing yesterday. I knew you had it in you, but seeing you on stage made it even more special." The little girl smiled shyly, feeling the warmth of the compliment, but also a sense of responsibility. She realized that talent alone was not enough. Courage and practice had made the moment possible. Later that morning, she went to her music lessons. Her teacher greeted her with a bright smile, eyes sparkling with excitement. "I heard about yesterday. Everyone is talking about how beautiful your playing was. Let's build on that and see what we can do next." The little girl felt a mixture of pride and pressure. She sat at the piano, her fingers touching the keys, feeling the familiar cool surface beneath her palms. The music felt different now, not just notes and rhythm, but a story waiting to be told, an expression of emotion she wanted to share. As she played, her teacher encouraged her to explore the softer and louder parts of the music, to add emotion in ways she had never considered before. Each note became a conversation, a reflection of her mood and her thoughts. She felt herself growing, not just as a player, but as a storyteller. The little girl realized that music was more than practice. It was a way to express herself, to communicate feelings that words could never fully capture. During a short break, her teacher asked her how it felt to be chosen randomly for the recital. The little girl hesitated, then admitted, "At first, I was scared. I didn't know if I could do it. But when I started playing, it felt like the music was carrying me." Her teacher nodded knowingly, explaining that sometimes, the most unexpected experiences could teach the greatest lessons. The little girl thought about this carefully, understanding that courage often appeared when it was least expected, and that stepping into the unknown could lead to growth she hadn't imagined. After the lesson, she walked home slowly, the autumn air crisp against her cheeks. Leaves crunched under her shoes as she thought about the previous night. She recalled how the audience had been completely silent, how every note had reached them, and how the music had made them feel. That memory stayed with her, giving her confidence and a sense of responsibility. She realized that her music could move people, and that knowledge was both thrilling and humbling. That afternoon, she returned to the auditorium, this time for a small practice session the organizers had arranged. The stage seemed smaller in the daylight, less intimidating, but still full of promise. She sat at the grand piano, adjusting the bench to the perfect height, and took a deep breath. Her fingers hovered over the keys, remembering the patterns and the feelings from her previous performance. The hall was empty, yet she felt a presence, almost as if the echoes of yesterday's applause lingered, encouraging her to play. She began with a familiar piece, moving carefully at first, then gradually with more confidence. The music filled the room, each note clear and expressive. She experimented with tempo and dynamics, trying new interpretations and discovering subtleties she had never noticed before. Every sound seemed to tell a story, each note a small adventure in itself. She realized that performing was not just about playing correctly but about connecting with the music and letting it connect with others. As she continued, she felt a change inside herself. The nervousness that had once dominated her thoughts was slowly replaced by a quiet focus and determination. She understood that every performance, whether in front of a few people or a large audience, was an opportunity to learn, to express herself, and to grow. She smiled quietly to herself, knowing that this journey was just beginning, and that every moment of practice would lead to even more meaningful experiences. Later that evening, she reflected on her journey in her journal. She wrote about the feelings of fear, excitement, and joy she had experienced, describing how each note had made her heart beat faster and how the audience's reaction had filled her with warmth. Writing helped her organize her thoughts and understand the emotions she had felt. She realized that music had become more than a hobby. It was a part of her identity, a voice that spoke through her hands and heart. Over the next few days, she continued to practice diligently, exploring new pieces and refining her skills. She watched videos of famous pianists, noticing how they conveyed emotion, and tried to apply similar techniques in her own playing. Each day brought a new lesson, not just about music, but about patience, perseverance, and self-confidence. She began to see herself differently, recognizing her potential and embracing the idea that she could rise to challenges, even when they seemed daunting at first. Her friends and classmates began to notice a change too. They commented on how her playing seemed more expressive, more confident, and more captivating than before. The little girl felt proud but also motivated to continue learning. She understood that talent alone was not enough, and that growth came from dedication and an openness to new experiences. The recital had been a turning point, and she was determined to keep moving forward. One evening, her mother sat beside her and asked, "Do you remember how scared you were before the recital?" The little girl nodded, and her mother continued, "Look at how far you've come. You faced your fear and discovered something amazing about yourself." The little girl smiled, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. She realized that courage was not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act despite it. That lesson stayed with her, shaping the way she approached music and life. As the week went on, she practiced with increasing focus and enthusiasm. Each session was a discovery, a chance to explore new melodies, new techniques, and new emotions. She began to understand that music was a living thing, something that could grow and evolve with her. Every note was a conversation, every piece a story waiting to be told. She felt connected not only to the music but also to the audience she imagined, sharing her feelings through sound. The little girl also began to think about future performances. She realized that while the random selection at the recital had been a surprise, she could create her own opportunities by preparing and embracing challenges. She dreamed of playing in larger halls, performing for more people, and sharing her music with the world. Each day of practice, each new piece, and each lesson brought her closer to that vision. By the end of the week, the little girl felt a quiet confidence that had not been there before. She understood that the journey was ongoing, that growth came gradually, and that courage could appear in the most unexpected moments. She smiled to herself, knowing that she had taken the first steps towards something larger than she had imagined, and that the experience of being chosen randomly to perform had opened a door to a world of possibilities. She felt ready, eager, and inspired to continue exploring the beautiful path of music, one note at a time. The day of the next recital arrived, and the little girl could feel a mixture of excitement and nervous anticipation bubbling inside her. This time, she had prepared carefully, spending hours practicing each piece, perfecting the transitions, and imagining the feelings she wanted to convey. She remembered the thrill of being chosen randomly for the previous performance and the way her heart had raced when she first touched the piano. Now, she felt a different kind of energy, one built on preparation and confidence, yet still laced with the thrill of performing for an audience. The auditorium was brighter and larger than she remembered, filled with rows of chairs and the soft hum of conversations. Parents and students took their seats, and the stage gleamed under the lights. The grand piano stood at the center, its polished surface reflecting the glow of the stage lights. She approached the stage with steady steps, her hands brushing lightly over the keys before taking her seat. The memory of the last performance strengthened her resolve, reminding her that courage and preparation could carry her through even the most intimidating moments. As the recital began, she watched the other performers take the stage. Each student had practiced diligently, and the hall was filled with music, each piece unique and expressive. She admired their dedication, taking mental notes of the techniques and expressions they used, knowing that every observation could help her grow. Her heart beat steadily, no longer pounding with fear, but with anticipation for the music she was about to share. When her turn finally came, she walked confidently to the piano. The audience watched attentively, sensing the focus and calm that surrounded her. She felt a quiet thrill, knowing that she had prepared well, and that the music she was about to play was ready to flow from her heart through her fingers. She sat down, adjusted her posture, and let her hands rest lightly on the keys, feeling the coolness and smooth texture beneath her fingertips. The first notes she played were soft and delicate, almost like whispers floating in the air. The audience leaned in, captivated by the gentle beginning. She felt the music grow within her, the melody spreading warmth through her chest and into every corner of the hall. Each note carried intention, each phrase expressed emotion, and she became fully immersed in the performance. The piano was no longer just an instrument. It was a voice, a friend, and a means of connection with everyone listening. As she continued, the melody grew stronger, more confident, and more expressive. She experimented with tempo and dynamics, shaping the music with the emotions she wanted to convey. Her fingers moved fluidly, guided by years of practice and the experiences of her first public performance. She felt the rhythm of the piece, the rise and fall of each phrase, and the way it could touch the hearts of the audience. The music was alive, and she was a part of its energy, guiding it with grace and precision. The audience sat in rapt attention, completely absorbed in the performance. Every note seemed to resonate with them, evoking memories, feelings, and emotions. Some closed their eyes, letting the music wash over them. Others leaned forward, as if trying to capture every sound. There was a moment when the hall seemed to hold its breath, suspended in silence except for the piano. In that silence, the little girl felt a profound connection, realizing that her music was not just for her, but for everyone who was listening. Halfway through the piece, she approached a particularly challenging section, a rapid series of notes that required both precision and emotion. Her fingers moved swiftly but carefully, guided by her memory and the countless hours she had spent practicing. For a brief moment, she felt the familiar flutter of nerves, but it was different now. It was excitement, a recognition that she was capable of overcoming challenges. She smiled faintly to herself and let the music flow, turning the difficult passage into a showcase of skill and expression. As she reached the climax of the piece, the music swelled, filling the hall with richness and depth. She played with passion, letting every note carry her emotions and tell the story she had envisioned. The audience was captivated, their attention unwavering, their silence a testament to the power of her performance. In that moment, she felt a profound sense of fulfillment, knowing that her music had reached them, that it had created a shared experience that words could not describe. The final notes approached, delicate and precise, each one lingering in the air like a soft echo. She allowed herself a brief pause, feeling the weight and beauty of the moment, before playing the last note with clarity and confidence. The room was silent for a heartbeat, as if everyone were holding their breath, reluctant to break the spell. Then, slowly, the applause began, soft at first, then growing louder and louder until the entire hall erupted with cheers and claps. Some people stood, others clapped repeatedly, and a few wiped away tears, moved by the beauty and emotion of the performance. The little girl sat at the piano for a moment, letting the applause wash over her. She felt a deep sense of pride and joy, knowing that her hard work and courage had led to this moment. She smiled shyly, her eyes sparkling with happiness. As the audience continued to celebrate her music, she realized that the performance was more than just notes and rhythms. It was an expression of herself, a way to share her feelings, her experiences, and her heart with others. After she stepped away from the piano, the organizers and teachers congratulated her, praising her skill, emotion, and poise. They told her that she had inspired many with her performance, that her courage and dedication were remarkable. The little girl felt humbled by their words, understanding that the experience was not just about her, but about the connection she had created with everyone in the room. The applause, the smiles, and the admiration were a reflection of that shared moment. As she walked off the stage, she noticed some of the older students looking at her with admiration. They nodded respectfully, acknowledging her talent and the grace with which she had performed. She felt a quiet sense of belonging, realizing that she was part of a community that valued dedication, courage, and expression. The experience had transformed her, giving her confidence and a deeper understanding of what it meant to share her music with the world. Later, as the audience began to leave, she lingered backstage, reflecting on the performance. She thought about the journey that had brought her here, from hours of practice in her room to the unexpected moment when she had been chosen randomly to play. She realized that each step had prepared her for this moment, and that courage, practice, and self-belief were the keys to success. The experience had shown her that even small moments of opportunity could lead to incredible growth. When she returned home, her family gathered around, celebrating her performance. Her mother hugged her tightly, praising her bravery and skill. Her father smiled quietly, proud of the way she had handled herself. The little girl felt a warm sense of belonging and accomplishment, understanding that the journey was as important as the performance itself. She had faced fear, embraced opportunity, and shared her heart through music, and that was a lesson she would carry with her forever. That night, as she lay in bed, she thought about the power of music and the way it could connect people. She realized that performing was not just about playing the right notes, but about conveying emotion, telling a story, and creating a shared experience. The little girl felt grateful for the opportunities she had been given, for the guidance of her teachers and family, and for the chance to discover the strength and courage within herself. She drifted off to sleep with a sense of fulfillment and anticipation for the next adventure in her musical journey. The little girl woke early the next morning, her mind buzzing with thoughts about her journey as a pianist. She remembered the first time she had been chosen randomly to play at the recital, how terrified she had been, and how everything had changed in just one performance. It was a memory that still made her heart race, but now it also filled her with pride and confidence. She had learned so much about courage, focus, and the joy of sharing music with others, and she knew her journey was only beginning. Her family encouraged her as always, their support gentle and unwavering. Her mother helped her organize her music sheets, while her father gave her a quiet nod, a reminder that he believed in her. Even the small gestures mattered. The warmth and encouragement of family gave her strength and motivated her to continue exploring her passion. She understood that while talent was important, the support and belief of those around her could make a difference in facing challenges. As she entered her music room, she noticed the familiar piano, the surface shining under the morning light. It was a symbol of countless hours of practice, a companion that had seen her struggles and triumphs. Sitting down, she let her fingers hover above the keys, feeling the coolness and smoothness beneath her fingertips. She thought about the upcoming performance at the next recital and felt a mixture of excitement and calm. Unlike before, her nerves were tempered by preparation and experience, making her ready to embrace the challenge fully. She began to play a new piece she had been practicing for weeks. Each note was deliberate, filled with intention and emotion. She moved through the melody with care, expressing the feelings she wanted the audience to feel. She felt a sense of flow, as if the music were a river, carrying her along effortlessly. Every time she reached a complex passage, she navigated it with patience and focus, turning what once might have been a source of fear into an opportunity for expression. Her mind wandered to her first performance again. She remembered the silence in the hall, the way every eye had been on her, and how the music had carried her through her fear. That experience had taught her that courage was not the absence of fear, but the ability to continue despite it. She smiled, realizing that every note she played now carried a deeper understanding, a connection to the lessons she had learned. Later in the day, she walked to the auditorium for a rehearsal with the other performers. The hall felt familiar now, no longer intimidating, but welcoming and full of possibility. She observed the other students, admiring their dedication and unique styles. Each person brought something special to the music, and she felt inspired by their commitment. Watching them reminded her that learning was ongoing, and that every experience, whether successful or challenging, contributed to growth. During the rehearsal, she played her piece with focus and emotion. The audience was small, mostly teachers and organizers, but she felt the same connection as she had during the recital. The feedback she received was encouraging, highlighting both her strengths and areas to refine. She listened carefully, understanding that constructive guidance was a tool to improve, not a criticism. Each suggestion became a stepping stone, helping her become a better musician and communicator through her music. Back home, she reflected on her journey. She realized that the path of a musician was not only about technique and skill, but about patience, perseverance, and the willingness to embrace challenges. She had faced fear, uncertainty, and the pressure of performing in public, and each experience had strengthened her resolve. The random selection at the first recital had been a turning point, opening her eyes to possibilities she had never imagined. Her family noticed the change in her demeanor. She walked with confidence, spoke with calm assurance, and approached challenges with a sense of purpose. They encouraged her to continue performing, to share her music with others, and to embrace opportunities as they arose. Their support reinforced her belief in herself and her abilities, creating a nurturing environment where she could grow and flourish. The day of the recital arrived once again, and the little girl felt a familiar excitement mixed with a quiet confidence. She dressed carefully, ensuring she was comfortable yet presentable for the performance. Her family accompanied her, offering smiles, gentle words of encouragement, and reassurance. The hall was filled with people, all eager to hear the students perform, and the atmosphere buzzed with anticipation. As she waited backstage, she focused on her breathing, letting the music she had practiced flow through her mind. She remembered the lessons she had learned, the feelings of connection she had experienced, and the courage she had discovered within herself. She reminded herself that each performance was an opportunity to express her heart and to share the beauty of music with others. Her fingers tingled with anticipation, ready to dance across the keys and bring the melody to life. When her turn came, she walked to the stage with steady steps, her posture confident, her gaze forward. The audience was silent, attentive, and ready to be moved by her performance. She seated herself at the piano, adjusted her hands, and let her fingers rest lightly on the keys. The first notes emerged softly, delicate and precise, capturing the attention of everyone in the hall. The music flowed naturally, expressing the emotions she felt and inviting the audience to share in the experience. As she continued, the melody grew richer and more expressive. She played with passion, each note conveying intention and feeling. The audience listened intently, some closing their eyes, others leaning forward, all captivated by the beauty and emotion of the music. The little girl felt a profound connection, understanding that her performance was a conversation, a shared journey through the notes and rhythms she created. Reaching the more challenging sections, she maintained focus and control. The intricate passages that once seemed intimidating now became opportunities to showcase her skill and emotion. She moved through the notes with precision, letting the music guide her and trusting in her preparation. Each challenge became a triumph, reinforcing her confidence and deepening her connection to the piece. The climax of the performance was powerful and moving. The music swelled, filling the hall with emotion and energy. She played with intensity and grace, allowing the audience to feel the story she was telling. Every note resonated with purpose, every phrase carried meaning, and the hall seemed to exist only for the music. The audience was spellbound, completely absorbed in the performance, sensing the dedication and heart behind each sound. As the final notes approached, she allowed herself a moment of calm focus. The delicate ending was played with clarity and emotion, leaving a lingering sense of beauty and completion. The hall remained silent for a heartbeat, as if everyone were savoring the moment, unwilling to break the spell. Then, slowly, the applause erupted, growing louder and louder until the entire hall celebrated her performance with cheers and standing ovations. She felt a deep sense of accomplishment, knowing that her music had touched hearts and created a shared experience. Stepping away from the piano, she received congratulations from organizers, teachers, and fellow performers. Their words acknowledged not only her skill, but her courage, emotion, and dedication. She felt humbled and grateful, understanding that her journey was shaped by both her efforts and the support of those around her. The experience reinforced her belief in the power of music and the importance of perseverance, courage, and self-expression. That night, as she lay in bed, the little girl reflected on the path that had brought her here. From the random selection at her first recital to her growing confidence and skill, every step had been a lesson in courage, dedication, and the joy of sharing music. She realized that the journey was ongoing, full of opportunities to learn, grow, and connect with others. Music had become more than a talent. It was a voice, a companion, and a bridge to touch the hearts of those who listened. With a smile on her face and dreams in her heart, she drifted off to sleep, ready for the next chapter in her musical journey.